Alright, listen up close because what YG just did on the internet last night is quite possibly the single dumbest, most self-detonating, most straight-to-federal prison move any rapper has pulled since Tekashi did what Tekashi did. And I mean I sat in front of my screen for about 4 straight minutes, jaw on the floor, replaying that post over and over, trying to convince myself I was reading it wrong. But no, I read it right. He wrote it. He posted it. He tagged the whole B team into the mess. And the LAPD, the district attorney, the feds, every homicide detective attached to the Drakeo the Ruler case, they were watching in real time. And now peep this, because what YG typed out with his own 2 thumbs while he is literally under active murder investigation is not the story. That is only the ignition. The real story is what Glasses Malone said the night before that lit the fuse. The real story is the $2 million allegation that just got dumped onto Drake's front porch. The real story is a Toronto rapper being accused of buying a hit piece, funding a smear army, and orchestrating what one West Coast legend is now calling a full-scale campaign to put YG in a federal cage for a killing everybody in Los Angeles already has an opinion about. So slap that like, lock in the subscribe, and stay right here, because by the time this video is over you will understand exactly why Drake's team is in emergency meeting mode tonight, exactly why YG's lawyer is not sleeping, and exactly why Drakeo the Ruler's mother might be the most important person in hip-hop this week. Day 1 heads, we are not exaggerating. We are not doing a bit. This is the moment. This is the fracture. This is the exact instant the Kendrick and Drake war stopped being a rap war and became a criminal justice war. And Drake is the one holding the receipt. Now let us rewind, because you have to understand the runway before you understand the crash. For the last 3 weeks, the LAPD has been circling YG. Detectives pulled him aside. They questioned him. They executed a search warrant. They walked back out with whatever they walked back out with, and they left the West Coast in a state of complete paranoid electricity. Drakeo the Ruler was stabbed to death at a festival in December of 2021, and for nearly 5 years the case has moved with the pace of a glacier that decided to take a nap. Nobody has been charged. Nobody has stood trial. And in Los Angeles, when a case sits that long, you start to hear the same 3 names in the same 3 whispers, and one of those names, the one nobody wanted to say out loud on camera for 4 straight years, was YG. Because the Drakeo case is not just a homicide. It is a fault line. Drakeo and DJ Mustard were not friends. Drakeo and YG's camp were not friends. And in the middle of all of that, Drakeo actually did have a feature with Drake before he died. So the geometry of the Drakeo case has always had Drake sitting in the corner of the picture, waving at the camera, not really in it, not really out of it. Until last night. Because last night, Glasses Malone, a man who has spent his entire career being one of the most emotionally honest, unfiltered, terrifyingly quotable voices West Coast hip-hop has ever produced, sat down in front of a camera and named names, and named numbers, and named the accusation that changes everything. Glasses Malone said Drake is paying people. Glasses Malone said Drake is funding a coordinated media campaign. Glasses Malone said Drake is dumping money into content creators, blog pages, YouTubers, podcasters, and Twitter accounts, all with one goal, to keep YG's name attached to the Drakeo the Ruler murder for so long, and so loudly, and so consistently, that the federal government has no choice but to arrest him. And when Glasses Malone said it, he did not say it like a rumor. He did not say it like a theory. He said it like a man who has been sitting on that information for weeks and finally could not carry it another second. Glasses Malone looked into the camera and he said, and this is a paraphrase, but the spirit is exact, that man is renting power. That man is spending money to touch YG's life. That man is a fan pretending to be a threat. And if he keeps playing this game, I am going to start talking about him in ways that will unmake his entire career in one afternoon. And Glasses Malone is not a rapper who bluffs. Glasses Malone is a rapper who, when he decides to open his mouth about somebody, that person is going to spend the next 6 months of their life on damage control choreography. Which brings us to the second detonation. Because after Glasses Malone said what Glasses Malone said, YG got on the internet. And instead of doing the smart thing, instead of doing the legal thing, instead of doing the thing his million-dollar lawyer would have begged him to do, YG did what YG does. YG went full B-team. YG reposted a message that basically confirmed the entire Glasses Malone accusation and added a signature at the bottom. YG then typed, and I quote as close to verbatim as I am willing to go on this channel, red alert. B-team, tap in. Now let me explain to the people at home who might not be from Los Angeles what red alert, B-team, tap in actually means in the language YG speaks. That is a mobilization call. That is a roll call. That is a rapper who is currently under federal murder investigation logging into his own real, verified, blue checkmark account and asking his affiliated street soldiers to assemble. On camera. On main. With his real name attached. While detectives are almost certainly running keyword alerts on his username. Bandwagon casualties, understand me, I have been doing this for years and I have never, and I mean never, seen a rapper self-incriminate this cleanly. This is not a bar. This is not a metaphor. This is not a diss track. This is a public assembly order posted by a man the state is actively trying to indict. And every single member of that B team is now facing the reality that if anything, and I do mean anything, happens to Drake in the next 90 days, every single one of them is looking at a RICO conspiracy indictment with YG's tweet stapled to the front of the file. So let us talk about the Drake side of this, because Drake is where the story gets nuclear. Understand me, I am not the guy who reflexively blames Drake for the sun going down. I am not the guy who thinks Drake wakes up in the morning and personally directs every negative headline. But I am also not naive. And what Glasses Malone is describing is not a fantasy. It is a documented playbook. We have watched it happen in real time for 2 years. After the Kendrick war ended, after the Not Like Us fallout, after the Super Bowl halftime show made the entire universe do the minor hand signal, Drake's team went into a very specific mode. That mode is called reputation reconstruction, and it costs money, and it hires people, and it deploys narratives. And that mode is not a conspiracy theory. It is a matter of public record. His own lawsuits describe it. His own filings describe it. His own team's leaks describe it. So when Glasses Malone stands in front of a camera and says Drake is funding a campaign to put YG in prison, the correct reaction is not to laugh. The correct reaction is to ask one question, is it plausible? And the answer, uncomfortably, honestly, painfully, the answer is yes. It is plausible. It fits the pattern. It matches the playbook. And that is exactly why YG's post scared everybody who loves YG so badly. Because if Glasses Malone is telling the truth, then YG just did the one thing Drake's alleged campaign was hoping he would do. He confirmed the narrative himself. Let me paint the picture the way a federal prosecutor is going to paint it if any of this ever hits a courtroom. A rapper is under investigation for a murder. That rapper's rival, in a completely separate genre-defining beef, is accused of funding a media campaign to pressure the investigation forward. That rapper responds to the accusation by publicly assembling his affiliated gang set on a verified social media account. That is not a defense. That is not a denial. That is a prosecutor's opening statement written in advance and gift-wrapped by the defendant himself. And this is what I keep begging the day one heads to understand. The internet is not a diary. The internet is a permanent, notarized, time-stamped, geolocated, court-admissible piece of evidence, and every time a rapper with a pending case posts something reactionary and emotional and territorial, they're handing the government a free bullet to load into the gun that is aimed at their own head. YG knows this. YG has been in the game for over a decade. YG has watched Tekashi. YG has watched Bobby Shmurda. YG has watched Young Thug sit in a courtroom for 2 years while a prosecutor read his lyrics into the record like they were criminal admissions. YG knows. And YG posted it anyway. Which tells you exactly how emotionally cornered he is right now. Which tells you exactly how real he believes the Drake accusation is. Which tells you exactly how afraid the people around him should be. Now let us go back to Glasses Malone for a moment, because I want to unpack what Glasses Malone actually said with the surgical precision this moment demands. Glasses Malone did not just accuse Drake of buying content. Glasses Malone accused Drake of doing it because of a bottle. And that word, bottle, is the detail that turns this from allegation into narrative. Because in Los Angeles rap folklore, there is a story that has been circulating for years about a Drake bottle incident, a moment at a club, a moment of disrespect, a moment where YG allegedly did something to Drake in front of a room full of people that Drake, according to Glasses Malone, has never let go of. And so, Glasses Malone is saying this is not a beef about music. This is not a beef about Kendrick. This is not a beef about the West Coast. This is a beef about a bruised ego from a night nobody was supposed to remember. And Drake, according to Glasses Malone, is now spending a rumored sum in the multiple seven figures to convert that bruised ego into a criminal conviction. That is the accusation. That is the shape of it. And every time I say it out loud, I understand more viscerally why YG lost his composure on the internet last night. Because if it is true, it is genuinely one of the most disturbing power moves a rapper has ever attempted against another rapper. And if it is false, it is one of the most damaging accusations ever leveled at a rapper of Drake's stature. Either way, somebody is telling a story that ends with a courtroom. And now peep this, because Glasses Malone went further. Glasses Malone said, and again I am paraphrasing to stay clean, that if Drake keeps pushing, Drake's residence is not safe. Glasses Malone said the guards do not matter. Glasses Malone said the money does not matter. Glasses Malone said the fame does not matter. Glasses Malone said, in the plainest language a man can use on a public platform, that there is a difference between rented power and real power, and Drake has been paying for the rented version his entire life, and when he finally meets the real version, he is not going to like what happens. Now I want to be extremely careful here. I am not endorsing that. I am reporting that. Because you cannot understand the temperature of this story without hearing the temperature of the words that started it. Glasses Malone did not just accuse Drake of a crime. Glasses Malone threatened Drake with consequences. And Glasses Malone did it on camera. And Glasses Malone did it in the same 24-hour window that YG posted Red Alert, B-Team, tap in. Which means if you are Drake's lawyer, you are not sleeping tonight. You are drafting cease and desist letters. You are calling private security firms. You are speed dialing Toronto police. You are running through a checklist that no rapper of Drake's commercial standing has ever had to run through in his entire career. And that checklist has YG's name on it and Glasses Malone's name on it, and a bottle nobody wanted to talk about at the top of the page. Let us pause for a moment and talk about DDG, because DDG is the small detail that hides the biggest signal. DDG dropped a diss track called AB, a shot at somebody, a moment of internet fun, and inside of that shot was a reference to the exact bottle moment we just described. Which means the bottle story is not a Glasses Malone invention. The bottle story has been leaking out of Los Angeles for months. DDG mentioned it. The blogs mentioned it. The comment sections mentioned it. Nobody wanted to say it on the front page because everybody knows what that story implies. And what it implies is exactly what Glasses Malone finally said out loud, that Drake has been carrying a grudge since 2016, since 2017, since whenever it actually happened, and that grudge has now been weaponized into what looks, from the outside, like a full-scale attempt to remove YG from society. That is a heavy sentence. That is a genuinely heavy sentence. And I am saying it on this channel because I want the day one heads to understand that we are no longer watching a rap beef. We are watching what a rap beef becomes when one side has $500 million and the other side has an active murder investigation. This is not a spectator event anymore. This is a case study in what wealth can attempt to do to a person in a courtroom and whether or not the person on the receiving end can survive it. Which brings me to the third layer, because there is always a third layer with this creator and this channel and this moment, and the third layer is what YG's post reveals about the psychology of a rapper who thinks he is about to lose everything. Understand me, because this is the part one want you to sit with. A rapper who is calm does not roll call his set on the internet. A rapper who is coached does not roll call his set on the internet. A rapper who is winning does not roll call his set on the internet. Only a rapper who is losing does that. Only a rapper who feels the walls closing does that. Only a rapper who has been told by his own attorneys that indictment is a possibility does that. YG's post is not a flex. YG's post is a scream. YG's post is a man who feels the state, the media, the label system, and a rival billionaire all pressing in on him from 4 different angles. And in that moment of maximum pressure, his instincts, his street instincts, his brotherhood instincts, his survival instincts overrode every legal instinct his lawyer has ever tried to install. Which is why the smart heads on the West Coast right now are begging the B team to stay home. Do not tap in. Do not answer the call. Do not show up. Do not post. Do not text. Do not respond. Because if anything happens to Drake in the next 90 days, that post is Exhibit A. And every single person who tapped in is Exhibit B through Exhibit Z. Now let us talk about the media war, because the media war is where Drake's alleged campaign, if it exists, actually lives. For the last 18 months, there has been a very obvious, very consistent, very well-funded content wave targeting YG. Not analysis. Not reporting. Not commentary. A wave. YouTuber after YouTuber, blog page after blog page, Twitter account after Twitter account, all posting the same 3 angles at the same 3 times of the day. YG is a snitch. YG is a suspect. YG is a coward. Not stated as opinion. Stated as narrative. Repeated as narrative. Amplified as narrative. And if you have any familiarity with how modern reputation warfare is actually waged in the influencer economy, you already know what that pattern looks like. It looks like a campaign. It looks like a paid campaign. It looks like a coordinated, budgeted, PR firm-managed campaign. And Glasses Malone is now the first credible West Coast voice to stand in front of a camera and say the quiet part into a microphone. He said Drake is paying for that campaign. He said the money is real. He said the receipts exist. And whether or not the receipts ever make it into public view, the accusation itself just fundamentally shifted the balance of power in this entire situation. Because now, right now, as you are watching this video, every single one of those content creators, every single one of those blog pages, every single one of those Twitter accounts has to make a decision. Do they keep pushing the narrative and risk being named in a defamation suit YG's team will absolutely file if this thing goes federal? Or do they walk it back and confirm, by their silence, that they were part of what Glasses Malone just described? And this is where the story gets, honestly, cinematic. Because there is a version of this timeline, and I am not saying it is the version, but I am saying it is a version, where Glasses Malone just single-handedly dismantled a coordinated multi-million-dollar reputation campaign with one uncut interview. There is a version where content creators start deleting videos tonight. There is a version where blog pages start pulling articles. There is a version where the Drake team, if they are guilty of what Glasses Malone accused them of, has to now spend the next 30 days trying to unring a bell that Glasses Malone just rang in the loudest possible way. And on the other side of it, there is a version where the LAPD investigators looking into the Drakeo the Ruler case suddenly find themselves receiving a very different kind of tip line volume. Not tips about YG. Tips about who funded the tips about YG. And once a federal investigator starts pulling on that thread, the thread does not stop pulling until it reaches a person's bank account. Which is why I am telling you right now on camera that this is the exact instant Drake's legal exposure just multiplied by a factor of 10. Not because of the beef. Because of the accusation. And because of the timing. And because of who made it. Let me be crystal clear on where I personally sit on this, because I know the comment section is going to demand it. I do not believe every YouTuber who has ever posted a critical YG video is on a Toronto payroll. I do not believe every blog page that ever ran a Drakeo speculation article was writing under paid instruction. That is not what I am saying. What I am saying is that the volume, the timing, the coordination, and the angle consistency of the recent YG coverage does not look like organic engagement. It looks like a wave. And waves, in the digital economy, do not happen by accident. Waves are engineered. Waves are budgeted. Waves are launched. Which means somewhere, somebody, some staffer, some fixer, some third-party PR consultancy, somebody signed off on a strategy that Glasses Malone just named on camera. And the moment that name enters the ecosystem, Everybody in that ecosystem has to make a choice. Are they in the wave? Or are they out of the wave? And the ones who are in the wave are about to become extremely, extremely quiet, extremely, extremely fast. Which brings us to the response, because Drake has options, and every one of those options is a trap. Option 1, Drake stays silent. If Drake stays silent, the Glasses Malone allegation lives forever. It becomes canon. It becomes part of the Drake Wikipedia entry in 5 years. It becomes the reason his next album cycle gets asked the same question in every single interview. Option 2, Drake denies. If Drake denies, Glasses Malone gets to respond. And if Glasses Malone responds, Glasses Malone is going to say things Drake absolutely does not want Glasses Malone to say. Option 3, Drake sues. If Drake sues, discovery opens. And if discovery opens, every text message, every wire transfer, every consulting invoice, every PR retainer, every influencer marketing contract in Drake's business ecosystem becomes a subpoena target. And I promise you on my life, there is nobody in Drake's inner circle who wants that. Option 4, Drake sends a diplomat. Drake calls a mutual, a big brother, a peacemaker, and tries to end this quietly with a phone call. The floor keeps dropping though, because Glasses Malone has already publicly said this is not a peace call situation. Glasses Malone has publicly said Drake wanted this. Glasses Malone has publicly said the door is closed. Which leaves option 5, and option 5 is the option nobody in this story should want, because option 5 is the one where the streets decide what the courtrooms will not. And that is the true horror of this moment. Because in the last 24 hours, we have watched a Toronto rapper get accused of buying a murder frame. We have watched a Los Angeles rapper roll call his set on Instagram. We have watched a West Coast legend deliver a threat so specific it will be quoted in the eventual biography. We have watched a genre-defining beef mutate from a music industry disagreement into what looks, from a federal prosecutor's perspective, like a fact pattern that could support multiple criminal referrals. And we have watched all of it happen while the actual family of Drakeo the Ruler, the man whose death started this 5-year fire, has to sit at home and read every single one of these tweets and wonder whether any of the people posting them actually care about their son. Because let me tell you, in all the noise, in all the accusations, in all the wealth, in all the label politics, in all the streaming numbers, in all the Kendrick fallout, the one thing everybody keeps forgetting is that a young man got stabbed to death in front of a crowd of people, and 5 years later nobody has answered for it. And whatever anybody says about YG, whatever anybody says about Drake, whatever anybody says about Glasses Malone, the moral center of this entire story is a family that still does not have an answer. And every single hour that this rap industry circus dominates the coverage is an hour that the actual case does not get moved forward. Which is a level of tragedy the internet is genuinely too shallow to process. So let us zoom back out and look at the receipts we know we have. We have a Glasses Malone interview accusing Drake of funding a media hit campaign against YG. We have a YG social media post activating his affiliated set in response. We have a DDG diss track that referenced the exact underlying grudge Glasses Malone described. We have an LAPD investigation that has already brought YG in for questioning at least once. We have a Drakeo the Ruler homicide case that has been open for nearly 5 years with no charges filed. We have a Kendrick and Drake beef aftermath in which the Drake side of the industry has demonstrably deployed reputation management resources on a scale hip-hop has never seen before. And we have a bottle. A single bottle. A single moment. A single grudge. Sitting at the bottom of all of it. Which is why the day one heads keep telling me in the comments, over and over, the same 3 words. This ain't over. And they are right. This ain't over. Because whichever way this thing turns from here, somebody's career is finishing on a stretcher. Either Drake's reputation is going to take a wound it cannot recover from, or YG is going to sit in a courtroom for a killing he insists he did not do. Or Glasses Malone is going to have to prove, in a public forum, every single claim he just made. Or the B team is going to make a decision that lands them in a federal building for the next 30 years. There is no exit ramp on this highway. Every lane leads to a wall. Which is why, listen, if you are watching this video and you have a friend who is in the streets and that friend has ever pretended to be affiliated with anything YG has ever been affiliated with, please, for the love of everything, tell that friend to lock the phone. Tell that friend to log out. Tell that friend to not tap in. Tell that friend to not answer the roll call. Tell that friend to spend the next 90 days doing anything at all, except being visible in the vicinity of this situation. Because if the theory Glasses Malone laid out is even fractionally accurate, then somebody, somewhere, in a very quiet room, is currently paying somebody else to be watching for exactly that. Waiting for exactly that. Documenting exactly that. And that documentation is going to end up in a district attorney's evidence binder before anybody in the B team even understands what happened to them. Bandwagon casualties. I am not exaggerating. I am not being dramatic. This is the exact fact pattern that put Young Thug in a courtroom for 2.5 years. This is the exact fact pattern that turned Tekashi from a rap star into a government witness. This is the exact fact pattern that has ended more careers, more families, and more freedom than any beat, any label, any producer, and any executive in the history of this genre. Do not become a data point. Stay home. And now, here's the part where I have to be honest with the day one heads about the thing that is really bothering me. Because underneath every layer of this story, the beef, the bottle, the campaign, the roll call, the LAPD, the accusation, the possible frame, there is a much bigger, much older, much uglier truth that hip-hop keeps refusing to look at in the face. And it is this. The genre has, once again, aligned itself around the entertainment value of a possible murder investigation. Content creators are making money. Blog pages are printing money. Twitter accounts are farming money. Podcasts are stacking money. And every single dollar of that money is being extracted from a story whose emotional center is a dead man and a family that misses him. The wave Glasses Malone described, the wave that may or may not be Drake funded, the wave that has flooded YouTube for 18 months, that wave does not care about Drakeo. That wave does not care about YG. That wave does not care about accuracy. That wave cares about attention, because attention is the only currency this economy actually pays in. And so what we are watching when we watch this story is not just an accusation. It is a symptom. It is a diagnosis. It is the exact reason the genre keeps giving birth to the same tragedy every 4 to 6 years. Somebody dies. Everybody profits. Nothing changes. And the family goes home alone. That is the pattern. That has always been the pattern. And Glasses Malone, whether he intended to or not, just kicked open the door of the room where the pattern is manufactured and dared everybody inside to keep pretending they are not in there. So what happens next? Here is what I am watching for, and here is what you should be watching for. First, watch for a Drake statement. If a statement drops in the next 72 hours, watch the language. Watch whether he names Glasses Malone. Watch whether he denies the specific dollar amount. Watch whether he denies the specific accusation, or whether he just does a general, I don't do that wave off. The specificity of the denial will tell you exactly how much of Glasses Malone's allegation is actually true. Second, watch for YG's next post. If YG doubles down, the situation is worse than we think. If YG deletes and goes silent, his lawyer got to him in time. Third, watch for the wave. Watch which YouTubers stop posting about YG. Watch which blog pages quietly pull articles. Watch which Twitter accounts start posting about anything else at all. Because that quiet moment when the wave suddenly goes still is the actual receipt Glasses Malone was talking about. That is when you know the story he told was true. Fourth, watch the LAPD press cycle. If a new statement drops about the Drakeo case in the next 2 weeks, understand that the statement is not a coincidence. It is a response. It is a piece of the chessboard. And you now have the eyes to see the chessboard for what it is. And finally, watch Kendrick. Because Kendrick has said absolutely nothing about any of this, and Kendrick's silence in this moment is louder than any bar he has ever written. Kendrick is a man who understands, better than anybody in this genre, that the loudest move is not always the one that gets made on a microphone. Kendrick built an empire in the exact same 18 months this alleged campaign was running, and Kendrick did it without ever once responding to any of it. Which is either the greatest coincidence in modern rap history or the greatest strategic patience in modern rap history. And I know which one I think it is. Day one heads, we are watching Kendrick play the long chess game while everybody else plays a short one. We are watching a Toronto artist stand accused of paying to fabricate a criminal case. We are watching a Los Angeles artist self-incriminate on Instagram. We are watching a West Coast legend threaten to burn the whole building down. And we are watching a Compton man sit on a couch, working on his next project, quietly turning into the most powerful figure this genre has produced in a decade. The PG-Lang flag over the boys' tour bus is not a metaphor anymore. It is a scoreboard. And the scoreboard just posted an update. So here is where I leave you tonight, because this story is not close to over. Glasses Malone is going to talk again. YG is going to post again. The LAPD is going to make a move again. Drake is going to respond, eventually, in one of the 4 bad ways he has left. And every single one of those moves is going to happen in the next 14 days. So slap that like if you have made it this far. I appreciate you, I see you. I know you are locked in. Hit the subscribe button and turn the bell on, because the second Drake responds, the second YG posts again, the second LAPD moves, this channel is going to have the breakdown live and in surgical detail before anybody else even understands what happened. And drop a comment down below and tell me exactly where you stand. Do you believe Glasses Malone? Do you believe Drake funded the campaign? Do you think YG just self-incriminated in a way he cannot come back from? Do you think the Drakeo case is finally about to move? I want to read every single one of those comments tonight, because the day one heads always see angles I do not, and I am going to be in that section responding to as many as I possibly can. And listen, if you want the next chapter of this story, the exact clip of Glasses Malone that started the whole fire, the full context, the sentence-by-sentence breakdown of what he actually said, and my read on what Drake's team is doing behind the scenes right now, go ahead and click the video I have pinned right beside this one. That is the setup. This is the payoff. And the next one is where we start pulling the receipts out of the paper shredder. I love you, day one heads. Stay safe. Stay off the roll call. And stay locked in, because this beef just became a case, and this case just became a moment, and this moment is exactly the kind of moment hip-hop is going to be talking about for the next 10 years. I will see you in the next one. And here is the piece the day one heads keep asking me to unpack, because it is genuinely the piece that keeps me up at night when I close the laptop, the timeline. The timeline is what makes this story different from every other Drake beef, every other Kendrick fallout, every other West Coast eruption we have covered on this channel. Because when you sit down and lay out the calendar starts talking to you in a language nobody wants to translate. Drakeo the Ruler dies in December of 2021. YG's affiliations become a whisper by early 2022. The whisper becomes a blog post by mid-2023. The blog post becomes a wave by 2024. The wave becomes a coordinated content storm by 2025. And now, in 2026, the coordinated content storm becomes a Glasses Malone accusation with a dollar figure attached to it. That is not a rumor mill running its natural life cycle. That is not gossip drifting on the wind. That is a curve. And curves like that, in this industry, do not happen without somebody drawing them. Somebody sat down. Somebody made a plan. Somebody laid out a schedule. And the person Glasses Malone is now pointing at, with a straight face on camera, is a Toronto rapper whose commercial position has become genuinely fragile in the last 12 months. Which is the piece nobody wants to say out loud, so let me say it. Drake is not the man he was in 2018. Drake is not the man he was in 2020. Drake is not even the man he was during the Kendrick War. Drake is a rapper who has watched his cultural gravity get lighter and lighter every single quarter for 2 straight years, and Drake, if Glasses Malone is right, decided the way to reverse that gravity was to burn a rival's freedom to the ground and use the smoke to reclaim the sky. That is the accusation. Those are the kind of crimes that end with warrants being served in Toronto by a joint task force, and I need every person watching this video to understand exactly how heavy that sentence is before we move on. If, and it is a big if, and I keep saying it is an if any part of what Glasses Malone described actually happened, actually got funded, actually got documented in an invoice, actually got authorized in a text message, then Drake has a legal problem in 2026 that the entire OVO empire cannot buy its way out of. Because the American federal system does not care how many Grammy nominations you have. The American federal system does not care how many stadiums you have sold out. The American federal system cares about two things: bank records and text messages. And Drake, whether he wants to admit it or not, has left both of those in more places than one.